The unexpected encounter. The galaxy was vast, and in the grand expanse of space, humans had finally earned a reputation as skilled diplomats. Their missions of peace, exploration, and cooperation had earned them a place among the stars. On one such mission, Captain Alex Reeve, a seasoned human diplomat, was sent to negotiate with a newly discovered alien race on the planet Solara. The planet was known for its towering blue mountains and thick green forests, a place untouched by most travelers. It was said to be peaceful, with a population that valued diplomacy and mutual understanding. As Alex's spaceship descended through the atmosphere, he admired the beauty of the planet below. He had seen countless alien worlds, but something about Solara felt different. There was a quiet strength about it, a sense of tranquility that felt like the calm before a storm. But Alex wasn't one to let doubts cloud his judgment. He had a job to do, and he was determined to complete it. He was greeted by a group of Solarian diplomats, tall and graceful, their bodies glowing faintly under the sunlight. They exchanged pleasantries, welcoming him to their world and offering him a tour of their city. It all seemed so perfect, so serene. But as they made their way to the central meeting hall, Alex felt an uneasy sensation crawl up his spine. Something was off. Suddenly, without warning, the calm atmosphere shattered. The ground beneath Alex's feet trembled, and a loud mechanical roar echoed from above. He barely had time to react before a group of alien soldiers descended from the sky, their ships hovering just above the ground. Armed with sleek, silver weapons, they marched toward the delegation, eyes locked on Alex with an intensity that sent a chill down his spine. The Solarian diplomats froze, their faces pale with fear. Alex's hand instinctively went to his side, where his communicator was, but before he could reach it, a sharp voice cut through the tension. "This is your only chance, human." The voice was high-pitched and trembling, yet there was a force behind it that made Alex pause. He turned toward the source of the voice and saw a young alien girl standing at the front of the group. She was small, with a fragile appearance, her skin a pale lavender hue, and her dark eyes wide with a mix of fear and determination. Her delicate frame trembled, yet her words carried a weight that made everyone in the room stop in their tracks. "Step away from the humans," one of the soldiers barked, his weapon raised. But the girl didn't move. She stood there, her eyes locked on Alex, as if he were the only one who could understand her. Alex's heart raced, his mind trying to make sense of the situation. Who was this girl? Why was she standing in front of the soldiers, risking her life for him? He didn't have long to figure it out. The soldiers were closing in, and the tension in the air was palpable. The girl took a step forward, her voice barely a whisper. "This is your only chance, human," she repeated. "If you don't come with me now, they will kill you." Alex's brow furrowed. He didn't have much time to make a decision. Should he trust her? Was she an ally, or was she just another part of the enemy's plan? But there was something in her eyes, something that made him believe she wasn't lying. He had seen fear in many eyes before, but the fear in hers was different. It was the fear of someone trapped, someone who had no other option. Without a second thought, Alex nodded. "Lead the way." The girl quickly grabbed his arm and pulled him away from the soldiers, who were too stunned to react at first. She led him down a narrow alleyway, her grip firm but gentle. Her movements were quick, precise, as if she knew exactly where she was going. Alex followed her without question, his heart still racing from the close encounter. They stopped at a small, hidden entrance beneath a series of stone arches. The girl glanced around nervously before motioning for Alex to enter. He hesitated for a moment, but the urgency in her eyes pushed him forward. They slipped inside, and the door closed behind them with a soft click. Inside, the atmosphere was far different from the chaos outside. The room was dimly lit, with ancient stone walls lined with strange markings. The air smelled of incense and old books. The girl stepped into the center of the room and turned to face him, her expression serious. "I'm not here to harm you," she said, her voice shaky but determined. "I'm here to save you." Alex studied her carefully. "Who are you?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "What's going on here? Why did those soldiers attack us?" The girl took a deep breath, her eyes lowering for a moment before meeting his again. "My name is Lyra. I'm from the Solarian royal family." The words hit Alex like a punch to the gut. A member of the royal family. This girl, so small and fragile, was part of the ruling class of the Solarian people. "We were supposed to be negotiating peace," Alex said, his voice rising in confusion. "What's happening? Why are they attacking us?" Lyra looked around nervously, as if the walls themselves might be listening. "It's not what it seems," she whispered. "The Solarian royal family is divided. Some want peace, some want war. And those soldiers, they're loyal to a faction that wants nothing more than to destroy the humans and take control of the galaxy." Alex's mind raced. He was caught in the middle of something far bigger than a simple diplomatic mission. And now, with Lyra's warning ringing in his ears, he realized that the path ahead was far more dangerous than he had ever imagined. The girl's hidden past. The room was quiet, save for the faint hum of machinery and the soft sound of Lyra's breathing. Alex stood there, still trying to process everything that had just happened. A member of the royal family, and she was leading him through dark corridors away from the soldiers who had just tried to capture or kill them. Lyra's small figure was tense, her delicate hands clenched into fists at her sides. She had been so sure, so determined to protect him, yet there was something about her that still felt like a mystery. Who was she really, and why had she risked her life for him? After a moment, Lyra spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't tell you everything before, but now I have to. You need to understand why I'm doing this." Alex looked at her, his expression softening. He had seen fear in her eyes, but also something else, something stronger, a fire hidden beneath the surface. He could tell she wasn't lying. "I'm listening." Lyra hesitated for a moment, her dark eyes flickering with memories. She seemed to be searching for the right words, as though even speaking them would expose something she had tried to bury for a long time. "My people, the Solarians, we are a proud species, once unified under one ruler. But a few years ago, our peaceful way of life was shattered." She paused, her voice shaking slightly as the weight of her past seemed to surface. "My father, the king, was betrayed by his closest advisors. They staged a coup, killing him in his sleep and taking control of the throne. My mother and I were forced to flee, but even then, we didn't escape completely. Those who betrayed us hunted us down, determined to wipe out the royal bloodline. The only reason I'm still alive is because I've been hiding, living in the shadows." Alex listened carefully, his thoughts racing. A betrayed royal family, a lost throne. It seemed like something out of a tragic fairy tale. But this wasn't some ancient history. This was her reality. "So, you're not just trying to save me," Alex said, piecing it together. "You're trying to save your people, and maybe even yourself." Lyra nodded, but there was a deep sadness in her eyes. "Yes, but it's more than that. I was the one who escaped. I was the only one who could. The rest of my family, they're either dead or trapped. I thought I had no choice but to live in hiding, but when I heard about the human diplomatic mission, I knew this was the only chance to change everything." Alex's mind was still racing. This young girl, this royal heir, was not just fighting for her throne, but for the future of her entire species. He could feel the weight of her words. He had no idea what kind of enemy she had made, but he understood now why the stakes were so high. The peace mission, the soldiers, the sudden ambush. It all made sense. She had known they would come for her, and she had known she would need an ally if she had any hope of defeating them. "I'm sorry," Alex said, the sincerity in his voice breaking through the tension. "I didn't know. I thought I was just here to help with peace talks. I didn't realize how much was riding on this." Lyra turned toward him, her expression softening, but only slightly. "It's not your fault. You couldn't have known. But now that you do, you have to understand. This isn't just about politics. This is about survival. If those soldiers catch us, they'll kill us both. They'll stop at nothing to finish what they started. Alex took a deep breath, his mind trying to process everything. The situation was becoming clearer, but it was also becoming more dangerous. He was caught in the middle of a political storm, and he had no— "I'm with you," Alex said, his voice firm. "What do we need to do next?" Lyra looked at him for a long moment, her eyes searching his face, perhaps for any sign of doubt. She must have found what she was looking for, because she nodded, her shoulders relaxing just a fraction. "We need to find the last of the Royal Guard. They are the only ones who can help us take down the traitors. There's a hidden resistance group in the mountains, far from the city. They've been waiting for someone to come for them." Alex raised an eyebrow. "Hidden resistance? You're telling me there's a group of rebels out there?" Lyra nodded. "They've been in hiding ever since the coup. They know how to fight, but they've been outnumbered and outgunned. That's where you come in. You're human. Your people have technology and tactics we don't have. Together, we can rally the rest of the resistance and take back the throne." Alex wasn't sure what he had gotten himself into, but he knew one thing for certain. He was no longer just a diplomat. He was now part of something much bigger, something that would change the fate of an entire species. And somehow, that shy alien girl had made him a part of it. The weight of what he was about to do hit him all at once. This wasn't just a mission. This was a fight for freedom, and there would be no turning back. "All right," he said, his voice steady. "Let's do it. What's the plan?" Lyra's expression hardened. "First, we need to get to the mountains. Then we'll find the resistance, and together, we'll prepare for the final battle." Alex nodded, already feeling the weight of their journey ahead. But for the first time since he had landed on Solara, he felt a sense of purpose. And with Lyra by his side, he knew they had a chance. The journey had only just begun, and the stakes couldn't be higher. A dangerous proposition. The night had fallen over Solara, and the distant hum of the city seemed to fade away as Alex and Lyra trekked through the dense forest surrounding the capital. The moonlight barely pierced the thick canopy above them, casting eerie shadows on the forest floor. The air was thick with the scent of moss and damp earth, but Alex hardly noticed. His mind was still reeling from the shocking revelations about Lyra's past and the dangerous path they were about to take. They moved quickly, Lyra's small form leading the way with confidence. Alex kept his pace steady, keeping close to her as they navigated through the winding trails. He could sense the tension in the air, the kind of tension that only appeared when someone was about to face something much bigger than they were. For all the peace he had tried to bring with his mission, this planet now felt like a ticking time bomb. The moonlit path ahead soon gave way to a clearing, where an old, worn-down building stood in the shadows. It was nothing like the grand structures of the Solarian capital. This was a hidden outpost, camouflaged and abandoned long ago, until now. The doors creaked as they opened, revealing a small group of Solarian rebels. They all turned to look at the new arrivals, and Alex felt their eyes scan him, judging, analyzing. "Who is this?" One of the rebels, a tall, muscular male, asked, his voice low and skeptical. His weapon was slung over his shoulder, but his posture was defensive. Lyra stepped forward, her eyes meeting the rebels with an intensity that told Alex this wasn't her first time speaking with them. "This is Captain Alex Reeve, a human diplomat. He's here to help us." The rebel raised an eyebrow. "A human? Why would he help us?" Lyra's face was hard as she met the rebel's gaze. "Because we don't have a choice. If we're going to defeat the traitors, we need all the help we can get. Humans have resources, technology, and strategies that we've been lacking. He's our best shot." Alex felt the weight of their gazes on him. He wasn't sure how the rebels had been surviving, but their distrust was palpable. It was understandable. They had been fighting a war for years, and now, a human, someone they likely considered an outsider, was standing in their midst, promising them hope. "We've got enough to worry about already without bringing in more distractions," another rebel, a woman with short-cropped hair and a sharp gaze, said, crossing her arms. "What makes you think we can trust him?" Before Lyra could respond, Alex stepped forward, his voice steady despite the pressure. "I get it. You've been fighting a long, hard war, and trust doesn't come easily. But if you want to win this fight, you're going to need more than just hope. You're going to need strategy. And I can help with that. I've seen what your enemies are capable of, and I've fought battles where the odds were against me. I know how to turn the tide." There was a long silence as the rebels exchanged glances, uncertainty hanging in the air. The woman with the sharp gaze studied Alex for a long moment before nodding slightly, though her wariness remained. Lyra spoke up, her voice quiet but forceful. "We don't have time to waste. The traitors are already preparing to launch their final strike. If we don't act now, we'll lose everything." The tall rebel sighed, finally dropping his guarded stance. "All right, we'll listen to your plan, but don't expect us to trust you just yet, human." Lyra gave a small nod of agreement. "That's all I ask for, a chance to prove it." The rebels led them inside the building, where a large map of the region was spread out across a table. Various markers and notes dotted the map, indicating enemy positions, supply routes, and key strategic points. Alex took a moment to study it, the seriousness of the situation setting in. The rebels had been planning for this moment for years, but their resources were limited. They had no outside allies, and their enemies were well-funded and ruthless. "Here's where the traitors have fortified their position," one of the rebels said, pointing to a heavily marked area on the map. "They've set up base in the northern mountains, where they control the flow of resources to the rest of the planet. If we can take that out, we can cripple their entire operation." Alex nodded, his mind already calculating the possibilities. "I agree, but it's not going to be easy. They have weapons that could destroy a city in a single strike. We can't just storm in there without a plan." Lyra stepped forward, her eyes focused on the map. "We know. That's why we need to strike from multiple directions. We have a small team of guerrilla fighters who can distract them from the east, while we push from the west. We'll hit them hard and fast, using the terrain to our advantage." Alex studied the map closely. It's a solid plan, but it's missing one key element. Lyra raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" "Intel," Alex replied. "We need to know what they're planning. If we don't have real-time information on their movements, we'll be walking into a trap, and I'm not willing to risk everyone's lives on a guess." There was a brief silence as the rebels processed his words. The woman with the sharp gaze spoke up again. "How do you plan to get that intel?" Alex turned to her, a glint of determination in his eyes. "I'll infiltrate their base." The room went silent, every eye locking onto Alex. Even Lyra looked at him in disbelief. "You're suggesting we send you in alone?" the rebel leader asked, his voice incredulous. "I've got experience," Alex replied, his tone calm but firm. "I can slip past their defenses, gather the intel we need, and get out before they even know I'm there. Once we have the inside track on their movements, we can plan our attack with precision." Lyra stepped forward, her eyes filled with concern. "It's too risky. If they catch you—" "I won't get caught," Alex interrupted, meeting her gaze. "I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to trust the plan. I've got a team waiting for my signal. We can make this work." The tension in the room hung thick, but after a long moment, the rebel leader nodded, though his expression was still wary. "Fine. You get the intel. But don't think for a second we'll be coming to your rescue if things go wrong." Alex gave a small nod, his mind already shifting to the mission ahead. "I don't expect you to. This is my responsibility." As the plan began to take shape, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just a fight for survival. It was a chance to prove that humans could be more than just diplomats. They could be warriors too. Unexpected ally. The air was cold in the early morning as Alex, Lyra, and the rebel team prepared to leave the outpost. The forest was quiet, the usual sounds of wildlife muted in the stillness of the daybreak. They had planned their route carefully, knowing that the traders in the northern mountains would be watching for any sign of an attack. Their mission was dangerous, but it was the only chance they had to take back control of Solara. Lyra was at Alex's side, her eyes scanning the horizon. She seemed focused, but there was a tension in her shoulders, a reminder that she was not just fighting for herself, but for her people. Alex couldn't help but admire her resolve. She had been through so much, yet she was determined to reclaim what was lost. He knew that if they succeeded, it wouldn't just be a victory for her. It would be a victory for every Xalarian who had suffered under the trader's rule. As they moved through the dense undergrowth, Alex felt a strange sense of urgency. Every step they took seemed to lead them deeper into enemy territory. The farther they went, the more he could feel the weight of the mission pressing down on him. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about changing the fate of an entire species. The tension thickened when they reached the outskirts of the mountain range. Alex could see the enemy's fortified position in the distance. Tall, menacing towers and heavily armed patrols. The rebels had set up a series of distractions to draw the traders' attention away from their approach, but there was no guarantee it would work. Suddenly, a familiar voice broke through the silence. "You really think you can pull this off without me?" Alex turned, his eyes narrowing as he spotted a figure emerging from the shadows. It was a man, tall and broad-shouldered, with short-cropped hair and a steely gaze that seemed to cut right through him. He wore the same gear as the rebels, but there was something different about him, something that made Alex's instincts flare. Lyra's face went pale. "No, it can't be." The man grinned, his expression one of both amusement and challenge. "Did you really think you could do this without the best tracker on the planet?" Lyra's voice was strained. "Rain, what are you doing here?" Rain stepped forward, his boots crunching against the dry earth. "I've been tracking you for days, Princess. I didn't expect you to show up with a human diplomat. But, well, I guess it doesn't matter now. I hear you've got a plan to take down the traitors. I want in." Alex's hand instinctively went to the weapon at his side. Something about Rain felt off, but he couldn't quite place it. This man had clearly been following them for a reason, but whether it was to help or sabotage them, Alex couldn't tell. Lyra shot him a glare, her voice colder than Alex had ever heard. "You've been tracking me. Why? You think you can just show up and join the fight like nothing happened?" Rain shrugged, unfazed by her anger. "I'm here because I know how to get things done. You've got a plan, but without me, it's a plan for failure. I know the terrain. I know the enemies. I can get you in and out without anyone even knowing you were there." Lyra took a step back, her eyes narrowing. "I don't trust you. After everything you've done, everything you've taken from us, you think you can just waltz in and play the hero." Rain's expression darkened, but he didn't back down. "I didn't ask you to trust me, but we both know you need me. And you need the resources I can offer if you're going to have a chance of succeeding on your only option." Alex watched the exchange carefully, sensing the tension between them. He wasn't sure what history lay between Lyra and Rain, but it was clear that this wasn't just a simple disagreement. There was more at play here, something that made their situation even more complicated. "What's the deal with you two?" Alex asked, his voice cutting through the silence. Lyra turned to him, her eyes conflicted. "Rain was part of the royal guard, but he betrayed us. He was one of the first to side with the traitors. He's the reason my family is dead, the reason everything fell apart." Rain's jaw tightened, but he didn't flinch. "That's not how it happened. You think I'd wanted this. I didn't have a choice. I did what I had to do to survive. The royal family was weak. Your father couldn't protect us. I was forced to make a decision. And now, I'm offering you a chance to make it right." Alex could feel the weight of the conversation pressing in on him. This was no simple betrayal. Rain's actions had torn apart a royal family, and now he was offering to help them take down the very people he had once allied with. There was no way to know if his motives were genuine or if he had his own agenda. "We don't have time for this," Alex said, his voice firm. "We need to focus on the mission. If Rain can help us, then we use him. But we stay alert. We can't afford any mistakes." Lyra hesitated, her eyes locked with Rain's for a moment longer. "Fine," she said finally, her voice tight. "But you betray us again, and I'll make sure you never see the light of day." Rain nodded, a sly smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "Understood, Princess. Let's get to work." With that, the uneasy alliance was formed. Rain would guide them through the treacherous terrain and provide crucial information about the traitors' movements. His knowledge of the mountains and the enemy's defenses was invaluable, but Alex knew better than to trust someone who had turned their back on their people once before. As they moved forward, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that they were stepping into a web of lies, and that this unexpected ally might just be as dangerous as the enemies they were fighting. But one thing was certain. The stakes had just gotten much higher, racing against time. The first light of dawn broke over the jagged peaks of the northern mountains as Alex, Lyra, and Rain made their way toward the traitors' stronghold. The air was thin, and the sharp winds cut through their clothing, making every step feel like a battle against nature itself. Despite the biting cold, the sense of urgency was palpable. Time was their most precious commodity, and the enemy had been given too much of a head start. Alex couldn't help but feel the weight of their mission bearing down on him. The stakes had been made clear. If they failed, Solara would be lost forever, swallowed by a faction of traitors who cared only for power and control. The people of the planet had been living in fear for far too long, and Alex had promised himself that he wouldn't let that fear continue. He had to succeed, for Lyra, for her people, and for himself. Rain moved ahead, his steps light and calculated, as though the harsh conditions didn't affect him at all. Lyra, too, seemed unfazed, her eyes constantly scanning the terrain, her body tensed and ready to react at a moment's notice. It was clear to Alex that both of them had grown accustomed to living on the edge, always alert, always watching for danger. But Alex, despite his own training, couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The silence in the mountains felt too quiet, like the calm before an inevitable storm. "How much farther?" Alex asked, trying to break the tension that had been building since they left the rebel outpost. Rain glanced over his shoulder, his expression unreadable. "We're close. The traitors have set up their perimeter a few miles past that ridge. After that, we'll have to move fast. They'll be expecting us." Lyra's voice cut through the cold air, sharp and focused. "We don't have the luxury of waiting. If we don't hit them before they can mobilize their forces, they'll wipe us out before we even get a chance to strike back." Rain nodded, acknowledging the gravity of her words. "Exactly. That's why we need to make sure we hit them where it hurts, before they have time to retaliate." Alex's mind raced as he considered their options. They had a small window to execute their plan, and every moment they spent hesitating could bring them one step closer to failure. But despite all his experience, he had never faced a battle like this, fighting alongside someone like Lyra, whose people's very survival hung in the balance. And now, with Rain, a man who had once been their enemy, leading the way, things were even more complicated. Alex knew he couldn't fully trust him, but he had no choice but to rely on Rain's knowledge of the terrain. The traitors were better equipped and more numerous than they were, and if they were going to have any chance at all, they had to act quickly. As they crested a ridge, the first signs of the traitors' encampment came into view. A series of guard towers, camouflaged against the rocky landscape, stood like silent sentinels watching over the valley below. The stronghold itself was nestled against a cliffside, fortified with walls of stone and metal. From where they stood, it seemed impenetrable. But that was the challenge. They couldn't afford to look at it like an obstacle. It was a puzzle to solve, and Alex had every intention of finding the pieces. Rain crouched low, motioning for the others to do the same. His eyes narrowed as he surveyed the scene before him. "There's a patrol coming up this path," he muttered under his breath. "We don't have time to wait. We need to move fast. Stick to the shadows, and don't let them see you." Lyra's eyes flickered with determination as she nodded. "We're not turning back. We do this now, or it's over." Alex felt the tension tighten in his chest. The adrenaline surged through his veins, and for the first time in a long while, he felt truly alive. This wasn't diplomacy. This wasn't talking to make peace. This was survival. This was war. With their path decided, the trio began their descent toward the traitors' stronghold, staying hidden within the rocky outcroppings. Each step was calculated, each breath controlled. The patrols were closer now, their voices drifting on the wind, but they didn't notice the humans and Salarian girl slipping through the shadows. As they neared the base, Alex's heart began to pound faster. He knew they had only moments before the traitors would be fully aware of their presence. Their plan was simple: break in, gather intel, and get out. The enemy had no idea that Alex and his team were coming, but even with surprise on their side, the traitors were formidable, and one wrong move could end everything. They reached the outer walls of the stronghold, where a large gate stood partially open. A faint glimmer of light filtered through the crack, revealing the heavily armed guards standing on the other side. Alex motioned for the others to stop. Their hearts pounded in sync, each of them understanding the gravity of the situation. Rain pulled out a small device from his pack and handed it to Alex. "This will disable their security for a few minutes. After that, we have to move fast. Once the alarms go off, all bets are off." Alex nodded, his fingers gripping the device as he approached the gate. His mind was focused. This was their one shot. He inserted the device into a hidden slot on the side of the gate and pressed a button. The quiet hum of machinery died, and the gate creaked open, just enough for them to slip through. Without a word, they moved into the stronghold, the shadows their only allies. The clock was ticking, and they had no room for mistakes. Inside the stronghold, the sound of voices grew louder. Alex's pulse quickened as they ventured deeper into enemy territory. The hardest part was about to begin. They were about to infiltrate the heart of the traitors' operation, and in a matter of minutes, they would know whether or not they had a chance of succeeding. Every moment brought them closer to their goal. But with every step, the tension grew, and the risk of failure loomed large. Betrayal and sacrifice. The heart of the traitors' stronghold was a maze of narrow corridors, flickering lights, and tight spaces that seemed designed to confuse and disorient any intruder. Alex and Lyra moved silently through the compound, their senses heightened, every footstep deliberate and calculated. Rain had taken the lead, guiding them deeper into the facility, his experience evident in the way he navigated the complex. But despite their careful planning, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Every corner they turned, every shadow they passed, felt like a trap waiting to spring. "Stay close," Rain whispered, his voice barely audible above the sound of their footsteps. "We're almost there." They reached a large steel door, which Rain quickly examined. He placed his hand on a small panel beside it, and after a few moments, the door hissed open. Beyond it was a control room, lined with monitors displaying live footage of different sections of the stronghold. Guards moved in and out of the various sectors, while a large map of the planet's surface was projected on the wall, showing enemy positions, resources, and military assets. "Intel," Alex murmured under his breath. "This is exactly what we need." Lyra stepped forward, her eyes scanning the data. "We can use this to predict their movements, cut off their reinforcements. This is the key to taking them down." But before anyone could react, the sound of footsteps echoed in the hallway outside. A voice shouted from the distance, "Intruders, sound the alarm." The air shifted, and Alex's heart skipped a beat. They had been discovered. "Go!" Rain ordered, his voice sharp and commanding. He grabbed Lyra's arm and yanked her back toward the door. Get to the exit, now. They scrambled through the hallway, but it was too late. The traitors had already sealed off their escape route. The walls seemed to close in around them, and the distant sound of sirens began to blare, signaling that their cover had been blown. Every instinct in Alex's body screamed at him to run, but they had no way out. They were trapped. Lyra's breath came in sharp gasps, panic rising in her chest. "We have to get out of here," she said, her voice shaky. "We don't have the time," Rain said, his voice steady but filled with urgency. "You're not going anywhere. Not unless you trust me." Alex turned to him, confusion flooding his mind. "What are you talking about?" Rain's face hardened, his eyes steely and cold. "I've been playing both sides. The truth is, I've never been on your side. I wasn't tracking you to help you. I was tracking you to stop you." Lyra's eyes widened in shock. "What? No, you can't be serious. You—" "I am," Rain interrupted, his tone sharp. "You think I would risk everything for a lost cause. You think I'd help you after everything I've done. No, I made my choice a long time ago, and you're not part of it." Alex's mind raced. The betrayal hit him like a punch to the gut. He had known something was off, but he hadn't seen this coming. Rain wasn't just an ally. He was the enemy. And now they were trapped, with no way out and no one to help them. "You were always one step ahead," Alex said, trying to make sense of it. "You knew we'd come for the intel. You led us right into the heart of the stronghold." Rain smiled, but it wasn't a smile of triumph. It was the smile of someone who had already calculated every move and was now enjoying the final checkmate. "You were always too predictable. A diplomat, trying to save the galaxy one conversation at a time. But I knew better. I always knew how this would end." Lyra looked between Alex and Rain, the weight of the situation crashing down on her. "So this is it. After everything we've been through, this is how you repay us. You're going to let us die here." Rain's expression softened, but only for a moment. "I don't want you to die, but I can't let you win. Not after everything I've lost. There's no room for compassion in this world. Only survival." The room was filled with the blaring of alarms and the hurried footsteps of soldiers closing in. The countdown had begun, and Alex knew they had only moments to act. "We're not done yet," he said, his voice a low growl. "If you think I'm going down without a fight, you're sorely mistaken." Lyra's eyes flashed with defiance, and she stepped closer to Rain, her voice steady. "You might have betrayed us, but you don't get to decide how this ends. We do." The tension between them was thick, but Alex could see it in Lyra's eyes. She wasn't ready to give up. She wasn't ready to let Rain's treachery be the final word. And neither was he. "We don't need him," Alex said. "We'll get out of here, with or without his help." The door behind them burst open, and a group of armed soldiers poured into the room, weapons raised. But before they could react, Lyra moved faster than Alex could follow. She grabbed a discarded weapon from the floor and fired, sending 2 soldiers crashing to the ground. The remaining soldiers hesitated, momentarily caught off guard. "Now," Lyra shouted, her voice fierce and full of command. "We fight." Rain's face twisted in frustration as he backed away, his eyes narrowing. "You think you can win this? Fine. But know this. Whatever happens next, it's on you." Alex didn't have time for his words. The soldiers were closing in, and every moment counted. Lyra and Alex moved as one, attacking with precision, using the chaos to their advantage. It was the only way they had a chance of getting out alive. But as the last soldier fell, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was yet to come. They had escaped the immediate danger, but Rain's betrayal still lingered in the air like a shadow they couldn't outrun. And now, more than ever, they would have to trust each other if they were going to survive. They had no choice but to keep moving forward, because the real battle, both for their lives and for the fate of Solara, had only just begun. The final stand. The air was thick with the scent of burning debris, the distant crackle of explosions echoing across the stronghold as Alex and Lyra raced through the compound. The rebellion had ignited like wildfire, spreading from every corner of the base as rebels fought with everything they had left. They had broken through the enemy's defenses, but now they were outnumbered, with the traitors rallying their forces for a final assault. This was the moment that would determine the future of Solara, and they had no time left. Alex's heart pounded in his chest as he kept pace with Lyra, her movements quick and fluid, a stark contrast to the chaos around them. He had never been in a battle like this before. Every corner they turned, every shadow they passed, was filled with danger. But there was something else in the air too, something different. The sound of gunfire, the cries of warriors, and the clash of metal were all mixed with the unmistakable beat of adrenaline. This wasn't just a fight for survival. It was a fight for hope, for everything that had been lost, for a chance to reclaim what was theirs. Rain. Lyra shouted over the din of battle. Where is he? Alex glanced around, his eyes scanning the chaos. Rain had disappeared after their brief confrontation, leaving behind nothing but questions. He wasn't sure whether Rain was still working against them or had been swallowed up by the enemy's ranks. But now, in this final stand, the uncertainty of his betrayal hung heavily over them. We can't wait for him, Alex said, his voice strained. The soldiers are closing in. We need to move now. Lyra nodded, her face hard with determination. I'm not running anymore. This ends today. They pushed forward, dodging fire from enemy soldiers, narrowly avoiding traps set to slow their progress. Every step they took seemed to bring them closer to the heart of the stronghold, where the traitor leader, Lord Draxon, waited. He was the one behind the coup, the one who had betrayed everything the Solarian people stood for, and now it was up to them to stop him before it was too late. They had reached the central chamber, a massive hall filled with soldiers and machinery. At the far end of the room stood Lord Draxon, flanked by his most loyal guards. He was tall and imposing, his sharp features and cold eyes betraying no sign of fear as he watched the rebels advance. He had orchestrated everything, from the betrayal of Lyra's family to the near destruction of her people. But now, standing at the precipice of victory, it was clear that his time was running out. Welcome, Princess. Draxon's voice echoed through the chamber, dripping with mockery. I've been waiting for you. And your little human friend, of course. I must admit, I never expected you to make it this far. Lyra's eyes flashed with anger as she raised her weapon. You've taken everything from me. But today, it's over. You're not going to get away with this. Draxon chuckled, his guard standing at attention behind him. You think you can defeat me? You're just a child, and he's nothing but a soldier in a diplomatic disguise. You're out of your league. Alex felt the weight of those words, but he refused to let them take root in his mind. They had come too far to back down now. We're more than you think, Alex said, his voice steady and full of conviction. We've already beaten your traps, your soldiers, your lies. This isn't over. Lyra stepped forward, her voice rising. This ends now. Your reign of terror is over. The battle that followed was a blur of movement, shots fired, soldiers falling, the sound of clashing weapons as Alex and Lyra fought side by side, their focus unwavering. The rebels had pushed their way into the heart of the stronghold, and they weren't backing down. Draxon's guards fought fiercely, but the rebels were fueled by something more than just survival. This was a fight for their future. As the battle raged on, Alex saw a movement from the corner of his eye. Rain. He had reappeared, but this time, there was no malice in his eyes. Instead, there was something else, something like redemption. He sprinted toward Alex and Lyra, his weapon drawn. We need to end this now. Draxon's forces are overwhelming us. We need to take him down, or we'll lose everything. Alex didn't know whether he could fully trust Rain yet, but in that moment, He had no choice. They were all in this together now. The traitor leader had to fall. With Rain by their side, they pushed forward, cutting through Draxon's guards with precision. The air was thick with tension, every moment feeling like it could be their last. But together, they were unstoppable. Draxon, the once untouchable ruler, finally began to falter. It wasn't long before they reached him. Standing on the balcony overlooking the chaos below, Draxon sneered as Alex, Lyra, and Rain closed in. "You think you've won. You've simply delayed the inevitable. Even if you kill me, someone else will rise to take my place. The galaxy is a place of power, and power is all that matters." Lyra's voice was cold and unwavering. "Not anymore. Your time is up." In a flash, it was over. Lyra's weapon fired, striking Draxon squarely in the chest. His eyes widened in shock as he crumpled to the floor, his reign of terror finally coming to an end. The room fell silent, the only sound the crackling of fires outside the walls. The battle had ended, but the victory felt bittersweet. They had lost so much along the way, and the cost of their fight would forever weigh on their hearts. But in that moment, they knew one thing for sure. They had won. Lyra turned to Alex, her eyes filled with a mixture of exhaustion and relief. "We did it." Alex nodded, a sense of peace settling over him. "We did." As the dust began to settle, the rebels cheered, their voices rising in triumph. But Alex and Lyra knew that this was just the beginning. The road ahead would still be hard. The scars of war would take time to heal. But they had a chance now. A chance to rebuild. And that was all that mattered.